Welcome folks to the third of the most recent community meetings to talk about the flood recovery in Grand Forks. A lot of you may have come out to get the update on the flood recovery options, which we'll be going through at the end. Before that, we will be having some brief updates on the general flood recovery process, and then a couple words on housing needs and needs assessment. My name is Kevin Gates, and I'm the Information Officer for the Flood Recovery Team. I will be emceeing tonight, including the question period at the end. So I'm going to get folks to put up their hands as we go along and introduce them on stage, just in case you aren't familiar with these faces. Starting from my immediate left, Steve Newton, Flood Recovery Manager. Don Dobson, a professional engineer and author of the much anticipated report that we'll be looking at some information from tonight. Graham Watt, Deputy Flood Recovery Manager. Councillor Christine Thompson from the City of Grand Forks City Council. Councillor Beverly Tripp from City of Grand Forks. Councillor Julia Butler, City of Grand Forks. Councillor Chris Hammett, City of Grand Forks. And Vice Chair Grace McGregor from the Regional District. Alrighty. You can make your donation in the jar by the door. So without anything more on my part, you know who's up front. We're gonna, like I said, briefly go through some updates, get into some more of the details from the reports, turn it over to you guys for questions. So, Steve.
Kind of not working, there we go. Okay, so real briefly, and in the interest of the main attraction tonight, we're not going to bring up the different section heads from the recovery team this go around for their regular updates. Had a meeting today with leadership from the banking industry here in town. We've been hearing lots from folks about challenges related to carrying mortgages and paying rent at the same time and what have you. And we didn't get any firm commitments out of them other than a willingness for them to go back and sort of take a look to see if there's anything that they can do to kind of help people some way. So more on that, hopefully. We also heard some information about challenges with insurance companies. So I had a chat with a fellow from the Insurance Bureau of Canada today, and what he assures me is that there may be challenges with insurance for the business sector, but he says there's enough carriers or enough providers in the insurance industry that there should still be flood insurance available in the future moving forward for residential. Now he did qualify that and say that the insurance companies will figure out what those rates need to be in order for them to be able to offer something, but he did say it would be available. So that's about all I've got on that one. Of course, we're in touch with the province almost daily on the status of the ask for support and what have you. And generally where we're at right now is all existing programs and their mandates and the various bits of legislation and all those sorts of things have been exhausted. So the gentleman that was here 2 weeks ago, Dave Peterson, he's the Assistant Deputy Manager that oversees that program. He's got a team of folks right now that are right on the final touches of putting a big ask in, and that's the way they describe it to me, a big ask to the government. So there's some internal business practices around how they do that I can't really speak to because I'm not that familiar with them. But anyway, so that's the stage we're at with all the support there. And I think we mentioned a couple weeks ago that there was an ask to the feds. And what that was, there was a deadline on a national program called the Disaster Flood something management, adaptive management, yes. So anyway, there was an ask put together by a team here. It's an expression of interest. One of the architects of that was the provincial government's director of flood mitigation and what have you. So typically he looks at these things first before they go to the feds, and he approves them or recommends them, sorry, and then it goes up to whatever that process is. So by having him on board, we're cautiously optimistic that that will go through. In classic sort of federal government and to some degree provincial government practices, this likely won't be a quick turnaround, I expect, based on my experiences, that the acknowledgement or the support for this, if we do get it, will come around January and be available for next year sometime. But there may be some interim measures that the province can take in the meantime. So when we know more, of course, you folks will know more. And on that note, I just got here that Rachel's up next to speak about housing needs.
Yeah, so Rachel, if you want to come up on stage. And Rachel, if you don't know her, she's been working hard on the housing needs portion of the recovery team. And so she's going to tell you a little bit more detail on how you can be in touch with her if you have a housing need, and whatever else comes out of the housing needs program. Rachel.
Thanks, Kevin. So I'm Rachel Warner, and what my team and I have been doing is we've been trying to get in contact with every single person that had a rapid damage assessment done to their house. So if we have not contacted you, please see Bob and Petra out at the back. And we just need your name and your phone number, and we can do an interview with you over the phone. It takes about 10 minutes just to find out where you are and what you need and how we can help you. So we really want to listen to you, so we don't mind stories, and we just want to help you guys out and find out how best we can fill your needs that you're having right now, especially in the housing department. So don't hesitate to call. Hopefully at some point tonight my number is going to be up, but if you don't have it, I have some cards at the back, or anybody at the back can give it to you, and you can contact me and we can have a chat. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Rachel. Next up on the brief update front is Graham Watt, Deputy Recovery Manager, and he will be telling us about the context for decision making.
Sure, thank you, Kevin. Okay, so basically what's being presented tonight is part of a conversation with the community that's kind of most of the way through about a 3-month process to look at options for floodplain management and flood protection in the city. It's the beginning of a long road of engineering, detailed design, funding, etc. What council will be doing at the beginning of September is they'll be asked to present a resolution on the preferred flood protection option that meets the community needs over the long term, over that 100-year time span. Likewise, the Regional District of Kootenay Boundary, their board, will also be looking at a similar set of decisions about the rural neighborhoods and the affected flood areas. So that decision, that recommendation from or resolution from the council and board will be going forward as part of the funding request to the province and federal government. That funding approach, as Steve mentioned, has already begun with an expression of interest, but the preferred method from the city is really part of the conversations that have been happening with the community this week. Council needs to hear back from the community how the options presented affect different neighborhoods, and then use that information for their decision. There will also be a survey going out after these meetings that will be sent out to affected areas, and so our information officer will be flowing through on that, I think, with some internal team planning pretty quickly here. I wanted to focus on the fact, though, that this is the beginning of a road which will take some time. Once we have funding confirmed, depending on the time scale of the different funding sources over the next several months, and then detailed design, implementation of some of the various options might take 2 to 4 years. So Don will be sharing a little bit of information about how that process looks like. What's really important tonight, the meetings we had this week, the survey going out, this is part of the public process to give feedback to council, and it's also part of the public process that would be used for land use decisions down the road. This is part of the consultation, and that's still something that needs to happen. Final point, where to go from here. The housing needs assessment Rachel mentioned, the financial component, there's support available through the Red Cross, and make sure if you have not been in contact with them and have financial needs related to flood damage, to start that process. Business recovery, of course, community features is the core of the economic recovery, and really needs to be, if you haven't talked to them, connected there. And also we have support now with Boundary Family Services, and they have some wellness support here tonight. If you're feeling stressed out about the situation, there are people to talk to, and we don't want you to be going away without being able to connect to someone that you need to. So I think that's about what I have. If there's anything else you have, there'll be questions later.
Okay. Thank you, Graham. I will put in a plug here for the e-newsletter. If you're not signed up, if you go to bfre.ca and you scroll down, it will prompt you to sign up for that. So that's where the weekly updates are being pushed out to, in addition to some blurbs in the paper, but most quickly would be via the website and the e-newsletter.